Well, I didn't think I would be getting another one of these, but it's another 2x4 troffer, and this is my first lighting find of 2014. Since I had just gotten my car street legal again, I was able to go to Urban Ore, and there was this thing. Just like the Brite troffer under my bed, 60s vintage, except for its non-air handling, and it has 4 lamps. And the trapezoidal cutouts were originally intact, but they're actually knockouts. And this is one of the knockouts. I haven't popped out the other one yet, but I did the first one because it just makes changing lamps a lot easier if you've ever changed lamps on one of these things. Anyways, I got it plugged into the power strip. Let's show you that startup sequence. The inner and outer tubes flicker at different times. This one was wired with the ballasts inner and outer. I've sometimes seen them with the ballasts wired left and right, but usually it's inner and outer like this one. Yep, inner tubes finished a little slower. The diffuser pattern is different though. It's some sort of a diamond shaped faceted prism with a grid similar to the Plascolite's Prismagrid pattern, except for much thicker, and there's a bit of a silver paint on the edges of the grid part. I'm sort of trying to decide whether or not I want to put this one under my bed in place of the one that's there now, because this one is in much better condition. It was even in a cardboard box, except for the box had been soaked in rain. And it's got the same Y-slot vintage GE square lamp holders, or rectangular, I should say. And I had to change out the ballasts. They were 277 volts, so I was going to go with a couple of Magnetek Watt Reducers, but one of them was acting a little funny, so there's a Chinese universal in there for now. I may change it out. Show you the inside. It's just about the same as the one that's on my under my bed, except for it's non-air handling, and the frame's a little wider, allowing me to put in a wider variety of diffusers. Both the troffer under my bed and this one have this little knockout in the center of the ballast cover. Don't know what it's for. It looks like it's for a pull chain switch, but it makes no sense to put one of those inside of a diffused troffer. And there's the other end. I still haven't popped out the trapezoidal knockout. I suppose you could drill a hole in the diffuser for the pull chain switch, but it makes no sense to do that. And I don't think they had emergency ballasts in those days, which is sometimes what those knockouts are for. The original ballasts in this were dated 1966, which I think was also the one under my bed was dated that as well. This one being in better condition makes me want to swap them out, although I like the Hall of Fame diffuser in my other one better than this diffuser. And also, 4 lamps is a bit overkill for just under the bed over the computer, although I could pop out that knockout and put in an inner lamp kill switch, or maybe drill some holes in the one of the lamp holder brackets and put in a couple of toggle switches so I can control the inner and outer tubes separately, and maybe have the daylight tubes in the outer tubes, which is what I'll use most of the time, and cool white or light white inner tubes for other applications, or maybe warm white if I wanted to eat under my bed, because warm white makes food look a little bit more appetizing. And I'm kind of nervous about sort of leaving that door frame up like this because it may slam close via gravity, but let's try some startups with the diffuser open. You can sort of see the tubes flicker at different times. There's 2 GE Ecoluxes, one of which are Ace branded on the outer tubes, and the inner tubes are a Sylvania Ecologic and an Alto. All these tubes have some use on them, but they're overall decent, except for the Alto. Altos are not the best. Anyways, I'm still trying to decide whether or not I'm going to make the switch, and if I do, what I'll do about controlling the 2 lamps separately, because like I said, 4 lamps is a bit overkill for what I want to do with this. So, that didn't close properly. And of course, by the way, another cool feature about the Brite troffer design is these latches. You can see there's a little hole for where I could put a keychain pull ring, a keychain ring, to make it easier to open and close. And it's covered by a lamp, but there's the original label, which still says 277 volts, but you can't really change out the factory labels. So let's close this up. There we go, now it closed properly. And we'll do maybe one more startup for the road. And the tubes started all at the same time. I want to see if I can capture the inner and outer tubes flickering at different times. They flickered at different times, but finished at the same time. I suppose if I really wanted to capture that, I'd have to film it on a cold start. 3, 2, 1, go. There we go, that's probably about as good as we're going to get. So, thanks for watching and enjoy. I'm going to do this eventually. It is the 4-lamp 2x4 1960s Brite troffer that I recently acquired. The other troffer that was under here just before this one was also a Brite troffer from the 1960s, except it was air handling and it only had 2 lamps. I've also once again added keychain pull rings, or keychain rings to the latches to make it easier to open. And like I suggested I was going to do, there's cool white inner tubes and daylight outer tubes. Jeremiah's old daylight tubes, as were in there before, are the outer tubes, and the cool white tubes are the inner tubes. All are 34 watts. I'd like to at some point find some 34 watt warm whites, but I haven't done that yet. And how I switch them separately are these 2 mini toggle switches right here. This one right here is the cutout switch for the inner lamps. So that's just daylight, which is what I normally have for webcam usage and for over the computer, most computer stuff. And let's turn that back on. Seems a little sluggish to start. The other switch is the outer tubes, which you've probably figured out by process of elimination. Now these are struggling. This happened last time I tried to film this too. But sometimes the inner tubes want to start, sometimes they're a little sluggish. They usually do fine on a cold start though. But anyways, the idea is that cool white and warm white even more so, food looks a bit more appetizing under those colors, especially the warm white, or if I had some GE reveal lamps, food would look a little more appetizing if I wanted to eat under the bed. But usually I just stick with the outer tubes. Let's turn these back on. I'll try to fire up those inner tubes again later. Sometimes they have to cool down a bit. Maybe it's a property of the ballast, maybe it's a property of the tubes themselves. I don't know. Anyway, as you can see, this is a different diffuser pattern too. Let's see if I can get my iPhone to focus. There we go. And it's a network of diamond-shaped faceted prisms surrounded with a grid over them. Kind of like a Plascolite's Prismagrid pattern that they still make, except for on the Prismagrid pattern, the prisms are conical instead of faceted, and the grid is more shallow and it's not painted at the end. You can't really see it that well, but see if I turn it off, maybe you can sort of tell that the grid's been painted silver. Let's turn that back on. Let's see if the inner tubes want to start now. Nope. Still start. Nope, there it goes. Anyways, and the Brite troffer that was under here before had a Hall of Fame 6250 diffuser, which was just some square prisms and a grid dividing it into 8 1x1 squares made up of divider ribs inside of the diffuser or reinforcement bars. I liked that diffuser better, but since it was in an air handling troffer which had a reveal around the edges where you would hook up the HVAC system, the whole plastic panel was about an inch smaller overall, so it wouldn't fit inside of this door frame. And Hall of Fame made that one up until very recently. And they also had 2 other patterns made up of 8 1x1 squares, which I'm not going to ramble on about those too much, but I described them in some of my lighting gallery pictures of these types of diffusers, both the ones that I found other places and the one that was in my fixture. But if I did find another one, or if I found one of the other two diffusers with the divider grid, the two one of those Hall of Fame diffusers, I'd probably switch them out. But I chose to switch this troffer out for the one that was there before because it's in better condition. I'm probably not going to change the troffer out itself, but I may change around the diffuser and maybe even trade this diffuser to another lighting gallery member, since some of them actually liked this diffuser and I didn't think as much of it at first when I got it, but it does kind of have a retro 60s flair. And let's see, I think I mentioned the switching system earlier. That's these mini toggle switches with this one on the inner tubes and that one on the outer tubes. And there's just 4 wires, 2 leads for each switch, and they're going into wires that are protected by spiral cable wrap, where they're butt spliced into longer leads, and then the parts going into the fixtures have the spiral cable wrap because I don't want them to get cut on the fixture sheet metal. Let's see if we can do a 4-lamp startup again with the inner and outer tubes flickering at different times. Inner tubes are struggling, or are they going to come on? There they go. Ah, yes. Anyways, that is my 1966. The original ballasts were dated 1966. It came with 277 volt ballasts. I swapped them out with some more recent 120 volt Magnetek Watt Reducers. Magnetek, the technology of magnets. Anyways, this is my 2x4 4-lamp Brite troffer from the 1960s. Thanks for watching and enjoy.